The Kaya Girl, Chapter 9. I went back home the following day. I was supposed to have stayed with Auntie a few more days, but I had a fever and my head hurt. And she wanted to hand me over to my father before it got any worse. It was a relief for everyone. I didn't want to be with her or Gifty anymore, and I didn't feel like going to Makola ever again. Daddy was still busy at the clinic, and Mommy was due back in a few days with my new baby brother, but I was happy to be left alone in the house for most of the day. Daddy took me to his clinic for a blood test and said I had malaria. He took me home and gave me medicine and told me to stay in bed. The house help took care of me, and he came back from the clinic during his lunch breaks and closed early to come home and see his most important patient, as he called me. I would sleep and watch cable TV all day, needing to escape from my own thoughts. The fever was gone after 2 days, but my appetite was still not back, and Daddy looked at me with a frown that evening. Abi, is anything bothering you? I expected you to be more, pecky by now. I looked away and he could see that he was right. What is it, dearest? He asked with renewed concern. You can tell me. I looked at the worry in his eyes. Yes, I will tell him, I thought. Otherwise, he might fear something even worse, and I had always been able to tell him things that many girls could not discuss with their fathers. Daddy, I lost a friend, I began, and tears came into my eyes. What? He asked in alarm. Who? Surely you don't mean... No, nobody died, I said, thinking to myself that it was not only people who could die. I told him all about Faiza. She was a Kayayo, I said, in Makola Market. You made friends with a Kayayo? He asked wondrously. Yes, I said, looking down. I waited for his disapproval, but it didn't come. That's amazing, Abena, he said instead. Tell me more. He actually sounded excited. Well, Dad, I said, she was just the most amazing girl. Really? What did you like about her? He asked. Well, she never pretended to be anything she wasn't, and she was so smart, Dad, you wouldn't have believed it. Oh yes, I would, he said. And she was fun, I finished off. So much fun. She had this great big smile, and she would say, Habba and Oi. And she was always up for trying new things, learning new things, and she was just my kind of person. Dad lifted my chin with his finger. You know, Abina, I'm proud of you, he said to my surprise. A lot of children in your shoes would think they were too good to be friends with a Kayayo. I understood what he meant, but oddly, when I thought about it, I almost felt as if Faiza had been too good for me. It was one of the many feelings I had with regard to her, which seemed to be the wrong way round when you look at them in the normal world. Dad, why is it that people here are not interested in the North? I asked. He replied. I know what you mean, but the North is a fascinating place. Oh, have you been? I asked. Oh yes, he replied. I even worked there once. What? I exclaimed. You never told me that. Well, you never asked, did you? He replied, and then added in a teasing tone, You little Southerner. Indeed, I reflected. I had hardly ever thought or heard about the North till I had met Faiza. It was a long time ago, continued Dad, before you were born. I was a new doctor and I was posted to the Tamale General Hospital for a couple of years. Wow! Yes, it was even before I met your mother. So what was it like? Well, it was challenging working there at that time. They didn't have a lot of facilities, but I had to make the most of it, and I had a lot of responsibility, even though I was young, because they were always short of doctors up there. Really? I said. But I really enjoyed living there. Although it was hard in many ways, it was also very interesting to observe totally different cultures and lifestyles from ours, and I found the people so warm and hospitable, and I loved their food. I made friends at work, and they took me to their homes at the weekends, and their mothers and wives cooked for me, and I loved it. Especially Tizet, Tuozafi. I smiled. I liked it too, Dad, I said eagerly. Faiza introduced me to it at the market. He smiled back. It's great, isn't it? Especially with granite soup full of green leaves. What a difference this was from Auntie, I thought. Who would turn up at her nose at Hausa food? I wished I could have spoken to Dad about this a long time ago. I wished I could have told Faiza that my dad had lived in the north. It was very hot up there though, he continued. That took a bit of getting used to. Yes, Faiza told me it was hot, I said. So, and he took my hand and asked gently, what happened with Faiza? Dad, I was naughty once and brought her into the shop when Auntie was out. I wanted to show her the internet. Oh yes, I'm sure she liked that. Oh, you should have seen and heard her, Dad. But a couple of days later, some money went missing from the shop. Gifty told Auntie that I had brought Faiza inside the shop and Auntie blamed it on her. Oh dear. Well, you shouldn't have broken your auntie's rules, don't you, Abena? Yes, Dad, I know, I replied. That was bad of me and I apologized, but Dad, I know she didn't take the money. Auntie was acting as if she must have taken it just because she was poor. But I know that no matter how hard things were for her, she would never have done such a thing. I believe you, he said straight away. How easy it was with him, I thought once again. But Auntie didn't, I said. She sacked her from the shop. She disgraced her. It was awful. I didn't know what to do. Tears rolled down my cheeks once again. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. Daddy held me and sobbed me into his shoulder. I'm so sorry, sweetie, he said, patting my back. I'm sure it was all a dreadful misunderstanding. Would you like me to speak to your auntie? I don't know. I hiccuped. She was so angry and it was all so dreadful. Okay, you know what? Asked Daddy. Let's just give it a little time and then you can think of what to do. No rush. I nodded and lay my head on his shoulder again. It was so comforting. I didn't wish myself away anymore. This was where I wanted to be. I wondered if Faiza had anyone to comfort her. Abina, Dad continued, people make all sorts of assumptions about poor people. Sometimes, it's almost as if they see them as a different species. I was calm and drowsy now, and just wanted to listen to him talk. Sometimes, I feel as if I have lived two lives, been two people. The poor boy from the village and the successful doctor and world expert in tropical medicine. The poor boy from the village? Now I did need to talk. I had never known that about my dad. Oh yes. I was born in the village, just like your friend. My father abandoned my mother, so we were very poor. We wore rags and didn't have enough food to fill our bellies, but we worked hard on the farm, and my mother saw that I was an inquisitive boy who asked a lot of questions. So she begged her brother to take me and send me to school. Fortunately, he did so, and I did well. So much so that I eventually won a scholarship and ended up going to the university to study medicine. "Dad," I said, seeing him in a new light. "How wonderful. Good for you." I knew my father had relatives in the village, but I had never realized he was born and raised there himself, and in poverty too. He just seemed so polished and cosmopolitan. It was hard to believe. And especially for someone like me who was born right into the fruits of his labor, it was difficult to imagine the courage and spirit that had led him to transition between the two worlds. But then, I knew someone else with such a spirit. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel bad for befriending a village girl," he concluded. "Because remember, your father is a village boy too." I was on my feet to greet Mommy and my new little brother when they arrived the next day. He was adorable. All baby sounds and smells. I couldn't put him down, and I was sorry I had to go back to school on Monday. I had wanted a brother or a sister for years, but Mommy had suffered from poor health due to asthma, and I had grown used to being the only child. She was amazed by how much I had grown over the holidays. "We are 2 women in the house now," she said. She asked how things had gone with Auntie Lydia, and I said fine. I didn't want to bother her with the Faiza issue now, when she needed to settle back home with little Kwesi. There would be time for that later. It was good to be back in school. All the busyness, all the familiar people, all the routines. Makola now seemed worlds away, and the trauma of the last day there was fast dissipating. But what never left my memory was Faiza herself. As I was reunited with my friends, it struck me each time how missing something was from our interactions, and how I had never noticed it was missing before I had met Faiza. My friends were fun, and they shared my space and my daily life. But there was no one with whom I had the kind of bond I had had with her. In our first English lesson, Miss Faraday told us to talk about what we had done during our summer holidays. Many of my classmates had been abroad. Helena Owusu talked about shopping with her mother in Oxford Street. Not in Osu version, the one in London. Alex Ampofo talked about some huge aquarium in Dubai, and especially about the sharks. The American and other foreign children had been back home or to exotic holiday locations all over the world. When I said I had spent the holiday with my aunt at Makola Market, there were a few giggles, but I didn't care. I had been abroad for the holidays many times before, but this vacation at Makola had been one of the most memorable in my life. I knew that hardly anyone in my class would have been to Makola, not even the Ghanaian children, so I described it in detail, and Miss Faraday nodded delightedly. "So you can get huge squammy snails there?" Alex Ampofo asked gleefully. I told them about the traditional medicine section, where you could get dried chameleons and other weird and wonderful things. I knew Alex and his cronies will soon be visiting Makola. The girls were interested to hear about my auntie's shop and about all the fabrics and clothes and makeup one could buy in the market, so much cheaper than in the shops of Osu and cantonments. One of the things Miss Faraday wanted us to mention and had listed on the blackboard was new people you met. So I told them about Faiza. I knew they would not understand the word Kayayu, so I tried to find another way to put it. "She was a Kaya girl," I said. "A Kaya girl?" Miss Faraday asked, sounding the R with an American accent, while several of my classmates echoed my own question from 2 months ago. A kaya what? I explained to them what a kayu was and talked a bit about the North, things that I had learned from Faiza, and the life of girls like her in the city markets. It was so different from everyone else's account of the holidays that they all listened quietly, and when I was done, Miss Faraday thanked me for teaching us all so many new things about the country in which we lived. For homework, she asked us to write an essay based on our discussion in class that morning on the best thing about our summer vacation. I wrote my essay that evening. In it, I described Makola Market and how Faiza and I had met. I wrote about her work and our unusual friendship and how she had taught me about her home and introduced me to their food right there in Makola. I also wrote about things I had taught her, how fascinated she was by the internet, and how hard it had been to convince her that the earth moved around the sun. I said how smart she was and how sad it was that she couldn't go to school. When I was done, I read it over and I was pleased with it. Now I had to think of a title. I pondered for a minute, then I wrote in bold letters at the top, The Kaya Girl.